Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Hockey Talk. This is the second episode of our fourth season, and we have another great one coming to you from our new facilities here in Hanover, Ontario, the new Whiteman facilities in Hanover. First thing we're going to do is, in a moment, we're going to kick it up to Owen Sound, where we pre-taped a segment at the Tom Thomson Art Gallery with the Saving Face Art in Front of the Crease exhibit that focuses entirely on goalie mask art. After that, we have an exciting segment coming up with some familiar faces here. We're going to talk the trade deadline, and we have an exciting panel here, starting with familiar face, Steve Fitzsimmons, play-by-play guy. Paul Hillier's back, a little bit of sunburn from the Dominican, I see. And you'll remember Jamie Bennett from last week is joining us too. So first we're going to the Saving Face segment, and then we're coming back with some exciting trade deadline talk. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, at the Tom Thomson Art Gallery in Owen Sound, and we're at the Saving Face Art in Front of the Net. And it's a really cool exhibit that's ongoing right now until, I believe, March?
End of March, March 30th.
March 30th, and that's why I'm wearing this mask, because it's focusing in on all of this cool art mask that there's a rich history of in all levels of hockey. It's not just the NHL anymore. You see kids all from minor hockey upwards getting all sorts of cool designs on their masks. And how about I take this off here? As you know, trying to get in the spirit of things a little bit.
It looks great.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. And so this is Heather McLeese, who is the curator of contemporary art.
You got it.
Nice. And she is kind of one of the driving forces behind putting all of this together. So thanks for having us here, Heather.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Now, where did the big idea for this exhibit come from?
So we're right in it right now. This, what you're seeing right here is sort of the seed to how this whole project came together. Curtis Sanford, he's a local goaltender, professional player. He lent us all of his masks that he had throughout his career, and that was sort of the start to showcasing and profiling the really fine artwork that's happening on this sporting equipment, the goalie mask. Once we got Curtis's, so there's 10 on loan from Curtis, there was this chain effect that happened within our community. Different local goalies, they reached out. A big artist that is repeated throughout the show is Vince Goodieff. He's local to the area, and he's done a few of Curtis's, so there's a couple here that he has painted. Curtis, throughout his career, he was coined the Sandman. So you see this really, mystical figure. Someone actually made a joke. It could be, say, Colonel Sanders or something.
Colonel Sanders.
On a goaltender's mask, but
I was thinking, actually, when I look at this, it makes me think of a Metallica album cover.
And all of them have this really unique look, and there's an intimidation factor that goalies want to give out when they're guarding their net. And I think for Curtis's masks, you definitely, I think I would be afraid to shoot a puck at him.
Certainly, it has that potential to distract you as you're looking up trying to find your spot. Yeah.
Definitely.
And with Vince Goodieff with some local connections, our man behind the camera, Adam, was mentioning that Vince had actually done some artwork on one of his cars at one point. So
Vince has done quite a few things in the, he used to do quite a few Harley Davidson bikes, but we've got quite a few masks on loan, and it's been really nice to chat with the artists to get their sense of what they think of the show. Vince just said he couldn't be more proud. He doesn't equate, or he doesn't think people equate painting on a goalie mask as fine art, but I would very much disagree with him. I think that the artwork, the airbrush artwork, the techniques that are used on these masks is extraordinary, and really that's what we're excited about with this show, is profiling these goalie masks as works of art.
And certainly tremendous amount of skill and planning, and it brings a little bit of personality into the game.
Definitely. You'll notice on the back of Curtis's, he actually has the symbol good fortune on all of his masks. And he said during his earlier career he was either drawing it with a Sharpie on the back, and then he would often work with the artist saying what he would like design-wise. So on a lot of these masks you're seeing here, you'll see this good fortune symbol. Of course, you'll see initials of his lovely wife, his kids. There's a lot
Right
of
on the
personal
back there,
notes. Yeah. It was interesting that he mentioned that the good fortune is, he's like, if it didn't have that on it, I wouldn't put it on. There's some superstition.
Like a lot of athletes are superstitious too. Yeah.
And I think with goalies as well, they've got a certain number of, it was just interesting to hear that it had to have it on or he wouldn't wear it.
He wouldn't do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was from Curtis's
That
side.
was from Curtis,
Okay.
yeah.
So some of the other interesting stories here with Curtis Sanford's masks. Here's one from when he was with the Hamilton Bulldogs of the American Hockey League. If memory serves me correctly, he actually won the top goalie award that year.
Okay.
That was a year when he basically would have been third string in the Montreal Canadiens organization, and Carey Price was at his peak. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity for call-ups, but he had a great year in the American Hockey League. And you were saying that there's some really neat local connections on this artwork.
There's some really lovely tributes to Owen Sound. So on this side of the mask, we have Billy Bishop. If you haven't been to the Billy Bishop Museum, you need to go, Billy Bishop House. As well, we've got Harry Lumley, who was a fantastic goaltender, and Harry's, who our local community Bayshore is named after. So we've got a portrait of him. It's the artwork on these masks, it's layered, and there's so many different images, and it's nice to have Curtis, who's local, bringing in his local connections to the area.
And an interesting thing with Curtis in his hockey career, he probably is the only person who played all junior levels in the Grey Bruce area. He, of course, played Junior C with Wyerton. I believe it was the Wyerton Wolves at the time. And then he played Junior B with the Owen Sound Greys, played a bit of Provincial Junior A with Collingwood Blues. And then he played, of course, in the Ontario Hockey League with the Owen Sound Attack. So it's amazing that he started his career that eventually took him from Vancouver to Russia, all over North America, St. Louis Blues, of course, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. He started all those levels of junior inside Grey Bruce. I'm pretty sure he's the only person who ever did that.
Wow.
And maybe the only one who ever does that.
It's you have to come in and see the show. These things are you could get lost in them. There's so many different layers. The graphic quality of some of the logos of the teams, the imagery that of the Sandman. It's quite captivating.
There's one, I'm going to ask Adam to come around here, from the KHL. Over here when he played in Russia.
Yes, very graphically strong, this one.
And we were talking about it as a medium, as a valid art form. And this one in particular, it says artist unknown, but as we looked a bit closer, we see it is engraved on the inside with Lefebvre. And
yes.
What I noticed about that was I have a friend who actually lives in Houston, Texas, who collects just specifically goalie mask art done by Lefebvre, and so this would be one of his pieces here. So just like any other art medium, there are a lot of collectors out there.
There's a lot of collectors. Some of the other masks you'll see in the show, coming from big collectors, and it's quite exciting. There's a lot of, you were talking about the different levels of hockey. I feel like there's a lot of different levels of hockey represented here. OHL, we have an attack goalie mask. We've got different local goalies who have played for several different teams, and we even have a progression series. It's a Molson Canadian theme, but it really breaks down the fundamentals to how this airbrush artwork works and how the different vinyl, the different layering is done. These things don't happen overnight. They're well planned, and Gerald McLaughlin's the artist who lent us this progression series. As well, it was featured in a video, how it's made. So we're really trying to give viewers a better sense of how this artwork is applied to this sporting equipment, the goalie mask, and how it's really beautiful.
The process. It's quite elaborate. Another thing, a theme that came up was a lot of these masks, after they've been worn, some of them have really interesting stories.
They do.
So we're going to go take in just a moment here, we're going to pop over and look at one that Thomas Vokoun wore in the NHL. So we were mentioning that there's a lot of really cool stories connected to these masks, the ones that were game worn. And here's one from Gerald McLaughlin and his Voodoo Air team.
Yes, so this mask is it's for the Florida Panthers, and it's Thomas Vokoun. And as you were saying, it's all about the stories that while these goalies were wearing these masks, what happened. So you'll notice on the side of the mask, there's actually some marking. So Thomas's defenseman, I think out of anger, there was a mess up in a play, and he ended up slashing. He tried to hit the goalie net, but ended up hitting the side of the mask, and it caused some damage. There's a note that Gerald gave us that there's actually still some of Thomas's blood on the inside of the mask. So
it wouldn't be a hockey display if there wasn't blood on something somewhere.
There really wouldn't be. But it's just neat to see these are game-worn masks, and these stories, what happened, it really brings you in, it sucks you in, and gets you looking at the entire artwork.
So that goes back to 2009 when that happened.
Yes.
It was Keith Ballard, tried to hit the post and ended up cranking his goalie, which...
I'm sure there were a few choice words shared between them over that.
That'd be an interesting moment in the dressing room afterwards when they're talking about that. So there's quite a few really cool pieces here from different artists. Different goalies.
Yeah, there's another one just down here that has, again, an interesting story to it, and this mask has been so popular with kids. So this is a local goalie, Jeff McDougald, and he said that he worked really closely with Vince Goodieff on this design. He wanted something playful, and he loves the cartoon, the well-known cartoon Pinky and the Brain. It's about these two mice or rats, and they plot to take over the world. So this one has been a choice favorite of children coming in and seeing this and just relating to watching the show.
When I was at university back in the 1990s, we did watch a fair bit of Pinky and the Brain. Yes.
But just talking with Jeff on his favorite masks that he wore throughout his playing season. He said that this one was his favorite because he developed a relationship with Vince on translating what he wanted on the mask, and he said he was finally comfortable with Vince and how he designed things. Like you see even this skull like image coming out of this laboratory, and he said that Vince is just so talented, and he took his designs and then just went to a new level with it.
And young Jeff McDougald played Junior B with Owen Sound Grays. It was during those couple of years where they were playing a lot of games in the Port Elgin area too. So they were the Owen Sound Saugeen Shores Grays. And I noticed there's some other pieces from when Jeff McDougald was with the Peterborough Petes.
Yes,
they're also here.
They are. They're just over here. As I was saying before, it's been amazing, the response from our local community on these shows. People were bringing in masks and saying, do you want to exhibit these? And with the local connection of the artist being local, Vince Goodieff, we thought, what a great way to show off local art.
And you can see a lot of wear and tear on the front of that mask, so it's certainly been through the wars. And I believe there's a few pieces just over here that are from, is it Jason Silverthorne?
So there's Steve, I believe it's Steve Silverthorne.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah, and he played for the Dallas Stars. He's now living in Boston, but his parents are very much local, so they called and said, would you want to borrow, we're visiting Steve, would you want to borrow one of his favorite masks for the show? And we said absolutely. So David Gunnarsson is the artist of this mask, and he's a big name in artwork and goalie masks internationally. He's designed several NHL goaltenders' masks, and This one's quite interesting. These gargoyles, these blue gnarling gargoyles with lightning, and you of course have the tribute to the Dallas Stars at the front. These things you need to come in and see them. They're a lot to take in, and the level of intricate details and layers is remarkable.
As you're saying that, as you look at them, there's more and more things pop out at you, a lot of interesting details as we go, like with that Jeff McDougald one, as you mentioned, that kind of above the castle, that skull
There's
emerging.
some hidden designs. You really have to study each of the masks, and the effects that a lot of these artists are getting with airbrushing and the layering is incredible. You need to come in and see.
And when you come into the installation, one of the first things that will grab your eye is this huge mural on the back wall.
So we really wanted to engage with other local artists in our community, and Billy Goodcat is a local graffiti artist. He's exceptional. He's painting the town, so to speak. He's covered a lot of different storefronts in the Owen Sound area, and I've worked with him before, and I gave him the idea of, can you translate what it's like to feel like a goalie in the net to our visitors? And so, of course, you're the goalie. You're looking out through the cage of the goalie mask, and you're looking down at the ice. You're under the spotlights. There's these bright, warm spotlights. There's fans in the audience in the arena looking at you, and there's the opponent coming towards you with the puck. It's an intimidating and hot spot to be in, so to speak, when you're a goalie protecting that net. So he translated that idea into this incredible mural.
It's kind of like a baseball catcher in the sense for a goalie. They're always facing the play, and they always get the overview. They see the whole ice. So that does do a great job of catching that idea.
Another challenge I gave to Billy, because we are an art gallery, we have standards to meet with how we're storing artwork and temperature controls. We couldn't have Billy use spray paint in our gallery space, so I gave him this challenge: can you create this large-scale mural with a paintbrush? And he did it, and he did it in such a beautiful way. We're going to take really high-res photographs of this mural before we paint over it, because we have new shows that we need to do. But you've got to come in and see this mural in person. It's one of a kind, and it really gives you, the visitor, a sense of what it's like to be a goalie.
And we keep inviting viewers to come on up to Owen Sound, to the Tom Thomson Art Gallery, to see this installation. And there's also some really other installations that are quite cool. I brought my boys over the Christmas break up here.
Yeah, you had a nice visit. It was fun.
Yeah, because they're pretty much obsessed with goalie equipment and pads and helmets and masks. So they loved it in here. But what was really neat for me was there's another room that actually has original pieces by Tom Thomson. And I was surprised by how much that captured their attention also. And I was going to say, for our viewers, the cost to get in here.
It's free. We are pay by donation. We're an accessible gallery. We want everyone to be able to come in and enjoy our incredible collection. Come see Saving Face Art in front of the hockey net, and while you're here, check out the rest of the collection. It's incredible.
There's a lot of amazing pieces here. And speaking of amazing pieces, we're now going to shift our focus over to the other side of the room with a brand new piece that was brought in just this week.
There's a brand new piece that I'm excited to show you.
So here we have the brand new piece. I believe that's just been here for a week. Interesting fact about this mask, it's to scale to Ty Domi's head. But of course, he never played net, so he never had to use this goalie mask. No, all kidding aside here. I believe this is an 8 foot tall.
This is just over 8 feet in height, about 5 feet in depth and width. It's a giant goalie mask. It's quite exciting. We approached MacArthur Tire, a local business and community supporter, back in October of last year. We approached them with this concept of a large-scale goalie mask that truly honors one of our most iconic Canadian artists, Tom Thomson, honors our local OHL team, and honors really important individuals who've made an impact in sports in our Grey and Bruce community. And it's a one-of-a-kind piece. So Gerald McLaughlin's the artist that created this mask for us, and we gave him some real challenges. We asked him to recreate 3 of Tom Thomson's original works. So the work this side that we're looking at now it's from a piece from our permanent collection entitled Sunset Sky. And of course we have Tom paddling on the lake. He's got his pipe in his mouth and he's paddling along. How Gerald and his team at Voodoo Air was able to translate this very painterly work into airbrush on a 3-dimensional object I was so impressed.
Because it's not like a flat canvas,
it's not a flat surface whatsoever, and it's big. And you have to come in and see it. We've had tons of school groups in to see it, and they're all wanting their photo with the giant mask, which is fantastic.
As we work our way around, you were mentioning the sponsorship with MacArthur Tire, and of course, J.D. MacArthur, who was the founder of MacArthur Tire, had a pretty good hockey career himself.
He did, and he coached for several years, and he dedicated a lot of his time to giving back to sports and hockey in our community.
He was part of a really well-known Owen Sound Mercury's team that had a lot of success, and then he coached the Owen Sound Greys himself for a long time.
He did, and we really wanted to honor JD and his involvement in sports. So we actually, on the other side of the mask, we've done a painted tribute to JD MacArthur. So he's skating on Thompson's Northern Lights piece. So this is in the background is a painting that's in our gallery collection that it's so iconic. You think of the Northern Lights and you think that's Canada. And so we've got JD painting, and coming off of JD's pucks here, there's all of these different individuals who have made a difference in sports in our community. And of course we have this wonderful quote, "I believe the most significant events in our lives, sports or otherwise, happen in our own backyard." Fred Wallace, our voice for sports. I couldn't imagine not hearing Fred's voice on sports.
Bayshore Fred, yes.
Bayshore Fred, he makes sports exciting in our area. And we have a booklet just at our front entranceway of all of the different individuals who are recognized on these pucks.
We'll let viewers, they can come in and explore that in depth if they want, but for instance, here's Shay Tiley, who is, she's still playing. She has had a very outstanding NCAA collegiate career, and in the past year has played for the Canadian national team as a goaltender. So yeah, quite a few notable names on there.
Definitely, and just off of that, so the last design that we asked Gerald to translate onto this mask, Tom did a piece in 1914. He did a stamp series, more in his graphic design years, and he did these stamps to promote Owen Sound. And we selected this one because this is really about our history in Owen Sound. You've got the Marine, you've got the rail, 2 west, 2 east, Owen Sound. And you know, the great thing about this mask, people can come in and see it, and then they can come in and see the original works that are in our collection that the mask was inspired by. That's what we're finding is the really neat response. People are asking, where are the pieces that Tom did that inspired this public commission?
What is the plan for this piece after this installation is done?
So MacArthur Tire, they're a fantastic company. They're really community oriented. They want our local audiences and fans hockey fans, attack fans to be able to enjoy this mask year-round. Our plan is to relocate it to the Bayshore Community Centre, and we'll have it at the front entranceway, so visitors, our local audiences can come in, take their photo with it. We've had several visitors take selfies with it here in the gallery. So it's a mask that it's a public artwork that has real longevity, and we're so excited to have the community enjoy it.
Now, we talked about so many rich local connections, both history, art, and sports. And probably the last piece of this installation we can draw attention to I couldn't even tell you the number that's up there because there's a few other rooms that have these.
So you need to come in and see this show because we had to involve youth in this show. We wanted to engage our local schools. We sent out about 1,500 design your own goalie mask templates to students and the schools, and the response back, we received just under 1,000 original designs from kids, from really people of all ages have designed these masks, and they've taken over this gallery space. They've also taken over our front gallery shop space down in our lower foyer. It really brings this community sense together, and it celebrates that we're really trying to engage kids in our community and inspire kids to, design. And what a fun thing to design, a goalie mask.
Absolutely, and as you look at some of these, like that snowflake one there is just amazing, and over on this wall there's one with some First Nations motifs on it.
There's been some incredible designs come back, and what makes me really excited about this, the kids are coming in to find their designs. They're bringing mom and dad, they're bringing grandma and grandpa, and we're getting such a lovely response, and we're getting so many people through and seeing what we're about here at the Tom Thomson Art Gallery. And we want that. We want people to come in. We're the community gallery. We want frequent visitors. And please come in and check out this fantastic show.
There's a huge amount of stuff. It's free, and it's right here in Owen Sound at the Tom Thomson Art Gallery. So this is Andy Clark, and I'm with Heather McLeese. And yeah, this is the Saving Face, art in front of the net. And come on up and check it out in Owen Sound. Back to the studio, and we'll be talking some trade deadline in a minute.
Welcome back to our studio, and we're about to kick off some great NHL trade deadline talk, and I know the guys are excited about it, and you know what, there's lots of teams excited as well, guys. There's been all kinds of conversations, as we know, that typically goes on as we approach the trade deadline. But Paul, I mean, when you look at, let's take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, do a little bit of a deep dive there. They obviously preemptively struck and got Jake Muzzin in a pretty good trade, I think, for both teams. But what do you see as a need that they might look at here coming up to the deadline?
They still need a little bit of grit. Like, that's the one thing the Leafs are missing. They have Zach Hyman up there. He's a bit of a gritty guy, but I think they need a secondary guy to play with. I think Hyman plays with Matthews, right? So they need somebody like that to play with Tavares. If they could swing it, I think a good fit there might be a guy like Wayne Simmons. I don't know if him specifically is that guy, but they need a guy like that who can contribute a little bit offensively, but you don't want to see guys like Tavares and Marner getting pushed around and possibly injured like Nazem Kadri was the other night. Right. They need somebody who can do that and maybe a little more defensive help. I mean, Jake Muzzin is going to be a defensive aid to them. I don't know if he's the answer by himself, but
a good piece to have.
He's a good piece to have. Yeah. He's definitely an upgrade from a few other guys that have been on the team this year, but another little piece to add to the defense core. Maybe someone else on the right side would be another piece they could add. Right. But I think definitely somebody with some grit to play on the line with Tavares and give him a little less problem when he
And maybe a little more open space out there too.
Yeah, I don't want to see Tavares digging in the corners for pucks and stuff like that. Like, his job is to put the puck in the net and make the plays, and they need someone to play with him who can do that gritty work and get him the puck more often.
You know, I think you hit on a perfect guy for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Andy, I mean, Wayne Simmons, a Toronto native, of course, passed the Owen Sound attack, as we all know. But this guy had 4 surgeries in the offseason to correct 4 different issues that he was playing through last year. Yeah. Not minor surgeries either. And he still managed to score, 20 plus goals last year. And, he struggled a little bit this year, but he's also admitted to the fact that he's trying to recover from everything that he's been dealing with in the offseason. This right now, I think the price might be a little bit down on Wayne Simmons in terms of production, Andy. But he's a guy that I think he brings that grit and sandpaper that they might be looking for.
Yes, and he played really well for the Canadian junior national team after his time in Owen Sound and when he went up to the Sioux. I'm a big fan of Wayne Simmons, but my only concern is this. Right now he brings a price tag of $4 million. He is an unrestricted free agent. Yeah. He's not going to make any less than that next year. And they're sort of pushing up. There's someone there we're really, really hoping the Leafs are going to be able to sign. And if they take on Wayne Simmons, I guess they're going to have to cut him loose at the end of the season if they're wanting to save the dollars to sign Marner. I know they need that grit. They can maybe get away with it during the regular season, but come playoffs, you need to have that tool in the toolbox. Last year they had Matt Martin, and they didn't particularly use it in the playoffs. I almost wonder if they have to look for someone with experience that can skate, but has that sandpaper. Maybe look to the American Hockey League and pick up someone cheap so that they're not worrying about dollars later on. They have Rich Clune, who's a tough guy with the Marlies, who hasn't played because they have limits on how many veterans they can play. I don't think Rich Clune's necessarily the answer. I mentioned last week someone like Cody Bass, who's hanging on with the Colorado's American Hockey League team. Guy can skate. He can drop into a lineup in a moment's notice. So maybe they need to look for someone like that. Wayne Simmons would be ideal, but I wonder about the dollars and cents on that one.
Jamie, I mean, I guess from the Leafs perspective, they have to be looking at philosophically what is their approach. They obviously, with Muzzin, went with a guy who has another year of term. They paid, a price for basically not a rental player, if you will. So, I mean, are they a rental market opportunity, or are they maybe going to look for somebody that maybe has some term?
I think at this point they have to look for somebody who's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, unless they can send some salary going out. And that looks like probably either Nikita Zaitsev or somebody similar. That's probably the closest thing they have to an albatross contract on their books at this point. We really can't see Patrick Marleau going anywhere the way that he's sort of adopted these kids on the team. And it's really seems that Zaitsev may be the odd man out with the way he's drawn ire from the fans. But Jake Muzzin has dropped into this lineup, and he's been very productive, but he's still a left-handed shot. And they do need a right-handed shot in order to sort of fill out that defense. Whether that looks like a Nick Jensen or it looks like somebody that's a bigger name, we'll have to wait and see. But with the bonuses coming to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, it's going to have to be a guy that's cheap and a guy that's not going to take up space next season, because they could get upwards of $3 million in bonuses to these guys, and they've only got about $1 million in breathing space, and they certainly can't have that roll over to next season.
Well, I guess the other thing is, what do they give up? If they make a move, do they give up? Are they going to trade for Are they going to trade a 4th round pick for a small rental sort of piece on the third line, or are they going to pay one of their prized prospects, or maybe a second tier of prospect, or a picks for somebody? I guess it remains to be seen, and there might be some people that you don't necessarily think are available that are. But why don't we talk about some of the people that we know are available right now? So, I mean, you don't go any further than Panarin, of course, for Columbus has been talked about for months, and Matt Duchaine, Stone, Dzingel for the triumvirate for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, the Ottawa Senators, what a horrible position they're really in. If they trade these guys, which they pretty well have to, and I know, we talked off air, and you were talking about that Stone may sign, and that's maybe the one they do keep. But, they trade these guys, they're going to be a worse team than they already are, and that means they're going to be probably finishing last. And of course, we know the Colorado Avalanche own their pick. So I mean, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't, really, if you're the Ottawa Senators. But I mean, Paul, what could they expect for Matt Duchaine? He's having a great year, more than a point a game, but they're not going to get the kind of return that they paid for him, are they?
No, they're gonna lose with Matt Duchaine no matter what they do. But I don't see a guy like Duchaine staying and signing an extension with Ottawa. They're going to have to trade him, take what they can get for him, and try to recoup as much as they can.
Is he worth a first round pick and maybe a reasonable prospect?
Oh, he's at least worth that.
Right.
Now, and it depends on the situation too, because if he goes to a team like I've got Nashville and Columbus as my front runners for where Duchaine goes. Columbus strictly because you could bring a guy like Duchaine into Columbus, and that might entice a guy like Panarin to stick around.
Right.
We're going to bring Duchaine in to play with you now. Could that keep Panarin in Columbus? And that would eliminate two of the big names off the list right there with one swing. It could work out that way. We're not the GMs sitting there trying to make the deals happen, but Ottawa is in a position. I think they're going to try to keep Stone around because he's a young guy who can still go skyrocket.
Homegrown talent too.
He's going to he's going to skyrocket even from where he is now, and I think they're going to try to do what they can to keep him there. But Ottawa looks like a team that might be getting the first pick for maybe a couple more years yet.
Unfortunately, they won't be getting it themselves.
They won't be getting
this year.
They won't be getting it this year, and that's going to be the sad thing.
But maybe they can finagle Andy and Dzingel's probably worth a first round pick on his own, I would think. Duchaine's probably worth a first and maybe a decent prospect of some kind. And if they can sign Stone, maybe they have the makings of they'd have a couple of mid to late first round picks. I know that's going to be a devastating day that they're not going to have their own first round pick, whether it be first or second. But at the end of the day, they're going to come away with some prospects to put in their kitty.
Yeah. I actually get a bit of a sense, Melnick not that long ago was saying, they're going to spend at or near the cap for 5 years and make a real run to it. And he's trying to make a commitment to the fans. They have a lot of good young talent there, with Tkachuk and with Shabbat and the others coming along. And that young talent tends to keep gelling as the season goes on, usually. Sometimes in that freshman year, they start to swoon towards the end as that long grind starts to wear in. But I think they're making a real run, especially at Mark Stone, because he has his legacy with the team.
Yeah.
I think they actually made a legit effort to get Duchaine too. I think they tried to keep him sticking around, but I know they didn't dress him, or they're not dressing him tomorrow night in the hopes of trading. I kind of wonder if that's a little bit of a ploy too, because I know they've put offers on the table for Duchaine, and I wonder if that whole sitting him out, maybe traded, a little bit of a bluff maybe, because maybe he's content to be there right now. I don't know, with the good young talent coming along. They have Formanton that's down with the London Knights that started the season with them. So, if they can get a few key pieces, they're a team that can flip the switch, not necessarily be, competing for Stanley Cup, but they're a team that certainly can make a real big improvement really, really quick with just a few key pieces.
Jamie, when you look at the Sens, they descended pretty quickly from almost in the Stanley Cup final to oblivion, really, and hitting the bottom of the skids. But you get a few decent prospects that turn out for you through the draft, and it can turn around pretty quick.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with what Andy said. They've got a lot of young talent that they're going to be able to draw from in the next couple of seasons. Now, something about Matt Duchaine is I really don't think he's going to bring in that great of a return, simply because we're looking at a situation similar to Thomas Vanek from the New York Islanders in 2013. This is a team that brought in a guy, they knew he was going to be an unrestricted free agent this season, and they simply were unable to get a deal done. And, Vanek, people knew he was going to go to Minnesota. But Duchaine, it's kind of just a foregone conclusion that the future is not in Ottawa. So I see a deal more in the lines of what Jarome Iginla brought the Calgary Flames in 2013. It will, in my opinion, include a first-round pick. I think it has to for Pierre Dorion to save face. And then I think that a couple of maybe middling prospects could be included. The deal that I'm sort of proposing here would be with the Winnipeg Jets, sending a first-round pick and guys like Nick Petan and Marco Dano. a couple of guys that could have larger roles on a struggling Senators team and finally maybe have the opportunity to break through. Now, Mark Stone is a little bit different. Like you say, he's a homegrown talent, and the Winnipeg Jets have obviously also had their eyes on him, including their fans chanting, "We want Stone" at one of the games. And he's a Winnipeg boy, so that's something that's
Not
going...
subtle or anything. Eh?
No, exactly, not at all. But I see more of a bidding war in the way of Mark Stone. And I think that a team that could be a dark horse for him would be the Nashville Predators. This is a team that's one of the best in the league, sees the probably biggest threats in Winnipeg and in Tampa Bay. And basically, they've got the prospects, they've got the picks, and they've got the cap space. So I see that as an interesting fit as well.
You know what I can see playing out with Mark Stone, and you mentioned Winnipeg, is obviously he's the hometown guy. I can see them making a really good run at him, maybe offering like Christian Vesalainen and first rounder and something. But if that doesn't play out, I wonder if they flip a very similar offer to Matt Duchaine if he's still on the table, and if Duchaine ends up going to Winnipeg.
Another interesting scenario, we talk about how the Sens are trying to sign at least one of these guys, but I think in Mark Stone's particular case, I think there's a chance they could trade him and actually sign him in the offseason as well as an unrestricted free agent, so that they get the talent and return for him, and then circle back and still get him. And give them $8 million a year or whatever it's going to take. I wouldn't be surprised to see that scenario on that particular player in Mark Stone's case, if they can't really finagle a deal, and they end up having to trade him. I think they could possibly circle back with him. Let's talk about some of the other teams that are very interesting that might jump in on this frenzy. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they've been riding a wave all season long. They only have 11 losses. They have 96 points right now. I mean, Jamie, do they do anything at all, do you think?
Well, I had another sort of idea for something that the Tampa Bay Lightning could do. And a player that I'd like to see them target is Jamie Benn from the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens are closer to being a playoff team than I think anybody expected at the beginning of the season. But this is the kind of guy that could really help the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a big guy, he's a tough guy, and he's also a depth guy who doesn't mind taking some of those more perhaps undesirable roles. So he's had a good year, and he's not going to impact on their cap next year, because we know they're going to be in a tight cap crunch along with a lot of their division mates. And something that I saw going back to Montreal was an idea of like Jan Ruda, who they picked up for Slater Cuckoo earlier in the year, and something like a 4th round pick. They're getting Canadians are getting a younger guy, they're getting a right-handed defenseman, and they're getting a pick. And they're giving up an unrestricted free agent for a team that's probably the odds-on Stanley Cup favorite at this point.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, when you look in the Western Conference, I mean, the Calgary Flames have done amazing things this year. Who would have thought right now that they'd be in first place in the West? I mean, I don't think there was probably many on their own staff that probably believed that would be possible. Andy, I mean, when you look at, they made a ton of off-season acquisitions. I mean, Lindholm has been nothing short of a revelation for that team. But him and Johnny Hockey have been just dynamite together. But I mean, what do you see? I mean, they've kind of got this situation in goal that seems somewhat, Rittich, and like he doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's been carrying things right now. But I mean, do they look in goal? Are they satisfied with that? What else might they do, do you think?
I think sometimes that combination, when you have the young upstart and then a veteran like Mike Smith,
right?
And he's a feisty one, but he's also a reliable one. I think he's an all-team guy. Yeah. So I think that combination might actually get them through there. I know some people always believe you just have to have like the one horse in net, and I do believe there is precedence out there where tandems have done well. Like I could go all the way back to Grant Fuhr and Andy Moog or whatever, but tandems can win. And obviously Mark Giordano has just been fantastic there. He's taken his game up another notch again. I actually thought maybe they would gel last year a little sooner than they had, but it's great to see them doing well. And the other thing is, we talked about the Leafs needing grit. I know last year when we had Ray Edwards, who's one of the Calgary player development coaches on, we were talking about their farm system, and they had something like 7 players that were 6'7", just in their AHL team. So, talk about having the grit that you can reach down. And
The Zdeno Chara School of Scouting.
they could put a pretty good basketball team out there, that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, San Jose not very far behind the Calgary Flames, just 1 point as we're talking right now. I mean, that's a team that to me has really rounded into form. Erik Karlsson's been out, of course, with injury, and maybe it'll be addition by getting off the injury reserve largely for them.
I think so. I don't think Calgary or San Jose is going to do much at the deadline. They're both they're both pretty solid teams all around. Erik Karlsson started the season pretty slow for San Jose, and he wasn't real good. Then he got hurt, but he's come a long way since. He's getting a lot of points now, and San Jose. I mean, look at Joe Thornton. He's having an incredible year.
The ageless wonder.
Yeah, I don't think he ages at all. And if they can keep that rolling with Pavelski and Couture, and like I said, you got to get points from Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson.
Beast.
They're just animals back there. If they can stay and get some decent goaltending, San Jose might be a contender too that we haven't really looked at.
Yeah, so in the West, maybe we look to the next tier down as far as the teams that might be more accurate. You have Winnipeg in that number 3 slot right now. You've got Nashville, who, they're always aggressive and they're never afraid to make a move to try to bolster their club. And then St. Louis, I mean, what a story. Jordan Binnington has basically led them back to a playoff position with some help from Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko rounding into form and some other things suddenly taking place. But he really was the stopper, pardon the pun, to ending that losing streak. And I mean, Jamie, as you said off air, I mean, they literally were the worst team in the NHL. At the end of 2018, and they've rounded back into form to be there. So, I mean, do we look at St. Louis maybe, JB, as a team that might do something?
Well, something to keep in mind with St. Louis is that they don't have a lot of prospects and picks to deal. This year's first rounder is arguably going to end up with Buffalo unless they tank the rest of the year, and it's top 10 protected, but it looks like they're going to be outside of the top 10, so it looks like it's going to end up with Buffalo. And they don't have a ton of cap space either. They took on a lot with the signings of Tyler Bozak, the acquisition of Ryan O'Reilly, and a few other guys in there. And I know that they've lost, Chad Johnson on waivers and stuff like that, but I don't see the St. Louis Blues being a big player at this year's trade deadline, simply because I think they need to take a little bit more time and find out exactly what it is they have.
They've taken a swing on Max Pacioretty. They made a big deal for him. They traded their first round pick for Thomas Tatar last year. I mean, in year number 2, sitting comfortably in a playoff spot right now. I mean, Andy, do you think that they may take a swing to do a major upgrade to that team? Do they do something minor, or do they maybe just keep their picks and make the playoffs here?
I wonder if they would be in on someone like Wayne Simmons, and then as a avenue to trying to sign him a bit more longer term. So, yeah, that would be interesting to see which way they proceed with that one, because they have a lot of youth. I think they have room to lean towards a little bit more towards the standard, trading for more of a veteran player at this point.
And I mean, when we look a year down the road, I mean, we see Colorado right now in 9th and fighting for their playoff lives. But I mean, you look at that situation, they're going to have Ottawa's first round pick. They're going to have their own first round pick, which is probably going to be a decent pick, 12th or 13th, maybe even a bit better. They're going to have Cale Makar, who they drafted 4th overall a number of years ago, who has been a beast in U.S. college, is ready to play in the NHL. A lot of people feel he might be, not to categorize it, but the next Erik Karlsson type ability level. So suddenly, the ship in Colorado is really swinging to where they're going to be a significant contender next year, maybe certainly the year after with things. But it's interesting to see, Joe Sakic, a guy who, I think was, Paul, it was very maligned before he traded Matt Duchaine, hanging on. He really has turned into a very good GM in terms of what he's gotten for his players.
He is. I mean, there was a time I thought he might even be fired.
I think we all did
last year, and now he's righted the ship, so to speak. And the Colorado is looking like a team. I don't want to see them do too much this year. They've only got the one line right now that's scoring, right. In the beginning of the season that was enough. They were up in the top of the standings, but now they've kind of drifted back to earth and they're mediocre.
Yeah. Might sneak in, might not.
Yeah, they might, but they're not going far this year with the team they have, and I don't see them selling their players that they do have, and I don't see them giving up their future for this season when they know they don't have a chance. I think they're gonna be a team that doesn't do a heck of a lot, and they're just gonna ride it out. And like I said, Cale Makar will be back next year. Mm-hmm. They might do some free agent stuff over the course of the summer to improve that team, get some secondary scoring in there to take the pressure off Rantanen and McKinnon. And we'll see what that does for them next year, but I don't see them doing a lot this year. I think they're gonna stand pat and just let it ride out and go as far as they can.
Should be interesting. We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk some more NHL trade deadline talk. You're watching Hockey Talk on Whiteman TV. Welcome back to Hockey Talk. I'm Steve Fitzsimmons along with Paul Hillier, Andy Clark, and Jamie Bennett in studio chatting NHL trade deadline. So let's take a look, guys, and do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the bottom feeder teams, if you will. I mean, there's going to be things happen there. And let's start with a team that, I mean, talent-wise and all the draft picks that they've frittered away over the last number of years, they should be a lot better, the Edmonton Oilers. And Paul, I mean, Connor McDavid, I mean, they're just wasting him so far in the last number of years. What is it that they can do to kind of help themselves here at the trade deadline in terms of getting rid of some people?
You know, I don't know that there is much they can do. I mean, their team is based now on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and that's pretty much all they've got. Andy and I were talking before we came in here this evening. They did make a trade this week to pick up Sam Gagner
and to get rid of Cam Talbot as well.
From the Vancouver Canucks, and they have gotten rid of Cam Talbot. Sam Gagner returns again. I mean, he fit into their first rebuild, and then he didn't, and they traded him away. And now they've brought him back for, what is this now, their third attempt at rebuilding?
So he wasn't good enough for rebuild number 1, but he's good enough for rebuild number 3.
Yeah,
Go figure.
It might work out that Sam Gagner works out for Edmonton this time. I mean, he does have some talent. I mean,
he does.
I don't understand how he hasn't been a 60-point player his entire career, because he does have the talent capable of doing that. He just hasn't seemed to fit in. Maybe he's the guy that they need to put with McDavid. It's hard to say. I mean, I feel bad for Connor McDavid right now more than anybody.
I think he did.
Because they've tried so many different players to play with him, and none of them seem to fit. And right. I don't really know what the answer is in Edmonton. Their best bet is to not lose their future this year and just try to stick with it, and maybe in the offseason try to sign somebody to play with McDavid, and then get somebody as a second line player to complement Draisaitl.
I guess, Andy Clark, I mean, one of the things with the Edmonton Oilers is they have drafted relatively well on defense. You know, as the OHL commentator for the Guelph Storm, I know they have Demetri Samarukov as an example of a player that probably is going to step into their lineup next year because he's capable of it.
And as a side note, too, I don't know if you saw that highlight yet. First time I've ever seen it in a hockey game, but he headbutted the puck.
Yes.
Intentionally, he was in the high slot, and he jumped in the air and tried to clear the puck with his head.
That's soccer training, right?
Soccer training. So sorry, back to Samurai.
No, I mean, and they've drafted a couple of other guys that maybe are capable. I mean, because they're horrible defensively. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah, Nurse is a good piece there, but they don't have depth at all. Yeah.
You know, they just don't have anybody really complimentary to go along with some of the guys that they do have. But you know. At the end of the day,
you don't want to ruin a guy like Bouchard, who's with the Knights too.
Well, there you are.
You don't want to ruin him by rushing him on.
And
he looked
out of his depth with them early on this year, and I mean, you know, they're under discussions about how they've ruined some other people, including a person in their lineup right now that was their third overall choice only a couple of years ago. Like, at the end of the day, they have to really focus on player development, and I think it would be a better route for them to go of, you know, hothousing their players in the AHL than, you know, I think Samarukov's going to play for them next year. I think he's capable of it. But actually, long term, it might be better if he didn't.
And for teams that are looking for grit, sorry, I'm having a brain cramp there, but they picked up from LA a few years ago to run shotgun with McDavid.
Milan Lucic.
Lucic, yeah. So is there any possibility of Lucic moving, or is his contract too much of
I think only if they take a lot of his salary back.
Yeah, they'd have to take salary back.
An interesting idea for that would be a trade with the Vancouver Canucks. Perhaps Louis Eriksson going to Edmonton to play with McDavid. Lucic goes to Vancouver. And I don't know, it was talked about a bit when he was a free agent. Would teams be willing to take on each other's bad contracts for a fresh start?
Certainly is possible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Milan Lucic played very well for the Boston Bruins for a lot of years too. You see Boston sitting in the second spot in the East, and I believe they're going to do.
return to Boston?
You know what? If Edmonton paid $4.5 million of his $6 million salary, maybe they take a gamble on a guy again to try a reclamation project like that. But the Boston Bruins, to me, are a team that's going to be aggressive at this trade deadline. I think, Jamie, you look at the names out there: Panarin, Duchaine, Stone. You know, the New York Rangers have some guys. Zuccarello and Kevin Hayes certainly could be guys that could be moved. You know, I think Shattenkirk is certainly, if they could figure out the money angle of Shattenkirk, maybe a team would take a gamble. But I mean, Boston, you know, they're going to do something.
They are, and I think they, like you said, I think they have to. David Pasternak's out long term, and this is a team that really heavily relies on their top line of Pasternak, Bergeron, and Marchand. And this is a team, like you said, that really needs to add something. The player that I see them going after heavily is Kevin Hayes of the New York Rangers. Now, the rumor is that the Rangers want to get a first-round pick out of Hayes. I'm not sure that I see that happening if he goes to Boston. Boston gave New York their first-rounder last year for Rick Nash. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that again, but something I could see happening would be a couple of picks, maybe a second this year, and maybe the fourth rounder the Rangers gave them as part of the Adam McQuaid deal, and then adding a prospect, maybe a Ryan Donato. And I know that perhaps Bruins fans will be unlikely to want to give up Ryan Donato, as his father played a lot of years in Boston. But you got to remember, his father also played one season with the New York Rangers. I mean, he only collected 3 points, but he still played for them. So, I don't know, I see it as being a good fit for Kevin Hayes with the Boston Bruins. And New York, really, they've embraced the rebuild. And if they can get picks and potentially solid guys for the future, I think that they'd have to consider it.
A team looking for goaltending help here. Is there a team that might make a play if Columbus philosophically says, you know what, we're going to trade Panarin, we're going to trade Bobrovsky? Paul, who's the team that might take a run and pay that kind of price for Bobrovsky, do you think? Is there a team that you can think of that might?
It's really hard to say because you look at the top, say, 4 teams in each conference right now, their goaltending is solid. So somebody who's looking to take a shot at a Bobrovsky or maybe even Jonathan Quick out of LA, they would have to be one of those teams that would be in the 6-7 slots right now.
Right.
Perhaps the New York Islanders.
Although, I mean, their goaltenders are
goaltenders
leading the save percentage and goals against. I wonder if they might not want to mess with that the way it's going there.
Given how Luongo's getting older, so maybe Florida would be in the mix.
And I think we have to give props to Piero Greco, the former OHL goaltending coach, who has done wonders with both of those gentlemen and has them playing career years. Underrated. He was the Marlies goaltending coach last year. Of course, they won the championship. So kudos to Piero Greco on what he's done so far.
I think the San Jose Sharks could be a team that would be in on somebody like Sergei Bobrovsky.
There's an idea.
Or unlikely they'd get Jonathan Quick from a state rival, but this is a team that's struggled with their goaltending, both Aaron Dell and Martin Jones. And the one stumbling block I see is that they don't have much to trade for them. They'd have to give up, they don't have a first-round pick in the next 2 drafts, but they have to really probably make a deal surrounding Ryan Merkley and perhaps some other pieces, maybe a Timo Meyer, or somebody else. They might have to move from their roster because they don't have many futures.
And there's another possibility of Columbus and San Jose doing a deal. Martin Jones for Bobrovsky, and I mean, there probably would have to be something else sent to Columbus in that, but there's another option right there because Martin Jones hasn't been performing this year the way he has in the past.
Right.
Bobrovsky's definitely leaving Columbus. He shows no interest in wanting to do that. A swap of goaltenders there might be all right.
I could see Anaheim or San Jose for those reasons you brought up there. I could see them maybe taking a crack at Jake Allen now that Binnington has emerged because he's a lot younger and they might have him tied up for a few more years and have that stability for a few years in net.
One of the teams that that you would think, given their situation, they should move some players, is the Anaheim Ducks. But I just don't know what it is that they can do. I mean, Jakob Silfverberg is the obvious one. He's a decent player. He's fairly young. He's an unrestricted free agent. They're not going anywhere. They have to do something with a player like that, you would think, Paul.
I've been looking at Anaheim for the last couple of months now, and I really don't know what they're going to do, because that team should be far better than they are right now. And is it time maybe to start moving out some of their older, more storied pieces like Getzlaf or Perry? Like, I know these guys have been there a long time. They've probably got no move contracts, but
well, it's not even that so much as who would take them, who could take them.
And someone, and that's the thing. You got to have someone who would want them, but maybe their time is up in Anaheim, and Anaheim needs to start thinking about bringing in some young, fresh faces and reboot this team.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and we're going to be here next week to bring you the results. We'll talk about that and some other things right here on Hockey Talk.